In a previous video, I talked about how to find the equation of a line using some easier examples where you're given the slope and the y-intercept. I'm going to work on a bit harder examples now that won't give you the slope and the y-intercept all the time, and you'll have to do a little bit of math to find the slope and the y-intercept. So we'll look at the first example here, and I'm going to start these problems just like I did when I was introducing this on the easier examples. When we're writing the equation of a line and we see these directions, and if we're looking for this line in slope-intercept form, it's always a good idea to write down y equals blank x plus blank. And if I can fill in those two blanks on y equals mx plus b, I'm going to be in good shape to solve the problem. I mean, that should be the answer once we plug this in. Remember that the first blank, the m, represents the slope, and the second blank represents the y-intercept, or where this graph would cross the y-axis. Okay. Now, if we go down to this example, we do have one piece of information here that's nice that we can plug in. They tell us that we have some line that passes through the point 1, 3 with a slope of 2. So actually, I'm going to take that right now, and I'm going to plug in. Remember, we said the slope is the first blank. I'm going to plug in that my line has a slope of 2. So let's put that in. Now, it might be tempting to put something in here for the blank, the y-intercept. You might try to plug the 3 in because this is the y-coordinate. But before you do that, think for a second at where the point 1, 3 is on the graph. If you look here, the point 1, 3 is actually over here somewhere, and that point is not on the y-axis. So we can't just put 1 in or the 3 in into this blank. We're going to have to do a little bit of math. You may notice here that this x matches this x, to plug in for an x coordinate, and this y matches this y that we could plug in for a y coordinate. And if we solve for the b like a variable, so I'm going to write my b here. We don't know what b is. We're trying to find out where this graph crosses the y-axis. I do know that the y coordinate of the point that we have is 3. I know that my slope is 2. I know that the x-coordinate is 1, and I'm just going to sneak a plus b in here. If I solve this equation now, this will help me solve for b. So I just plugged in a bunch of unknowns, and I'm trying to find the y-intercept. So now that I do that, let's go ahead and solve. So we'll multiply 2 times 1 first. That gives me 2. And I'm solving this just like a one-step equation. And then to get b by itself, I have to subtract 2 to the other side, which gives me b equals 1. And now actually at this point, I've got my answer. My answer here should be y equals 2x plus 1, which means that this graph has a slope of 2, which they told me, and it also will cross the y-axis at 1. And let's just kind of graph this and see what this looks like. So I already graphed the point 1, 3 over here. So you don't have to do this. We already have our answer, but I'm just showing you how this is connected. It has a slope of 2, so that means you'd be rising 2 and running 1. If I wanted to keep this kind of same pattern, I could also go down 2 and backwards 1 and just kind of keep extending our line. And if you notice here, as I graph this line, it crosses the y-axis right there at 1. And that's why that line, when we solved it algebraically, also has a y-intercept of 1. So it's all connected, the graphing, the algebra that we did here to find that. The reason that we're going to use this method is we may not always have a graph to work with, or that y-intercept, it could cross at some crazy point like right here, and we don't know if that's 1/2, whether it's 2/3, and we're going to have to use algebra to figure that out. So this next slide kind of sums up the steps that I just talked about. The first step you want to do is write down y equals blank x plus blank. We've already talked about that. You need to find your slope if it's not given next. Okay? A lot of times they'll give you the slope. If they say the slope is 3, you just plug it in. Okay? Doesn't matter what it is, you just plug it in. If it's not given, we'll talk about one of these at the end, but you want to use the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. They may give you 2 points, and you have to take an extra step to find the slope. Okay? Finally, if they give you an ordered pair, like let's say 3, 2, you plug the 3 in for the x and the 2 in for the y, and solve for b. You want to treat b like a variable. Once you found the m and the b, if you found it's 3 and 2, you're just going to plug in those 2 numbers into blank x plus blank and write your answer. Okay? So the answer should always have a y and an x, unless it's a very, very special type of line. But most cases that won't be the case, so it'll be y equals blank, x plus blank. So try a few of these just to give these a shot. And at any point, feel free to pause the video and work ahead on your own and then watch to check the answer. Okay, so we're going to look for the equation of a line that passes through 4, -1 with a slope of -1/3. So right away, my first step here is I'm going to plug in my slope. I know that the m is -1/3. So in for that first blank, this is where the slope hangs out. The number in front of x is -1/3. Again, I don't know what the b is. I don't know what the y-intercept is or where this graph crosses the y-axis, because 4, -1 is not on the y-axis. So what I'm going to do is treat b like a variable and solve for it. And all I'm going to do is just plug things in place of all my unknowns. Okay. Y, they gave me a y coordinate. I'm going to sneak the -1 in here for the y. They gave me an x coordinate of 4. I'm going to sneak that in. And I already have my slope plugged in. So from here, I'll have -1 equals -4/3 plus b. And if I add 4/3 to both sides, that's the same as 1 1/3. So, 4/3, I'm going to write 1 1/3 here. That might help us when we're adding these. If I take -1 plus 1 1/3, which is the same as 4/3, that should be giving me a y-intercept of plain old 1/3. So if I go back here and I plug this b in to my final answer, I should be getting 1/3. And notice that if we were to graph that, you wouldn't really know that it's crossing exactly at 1/3. So it's good to use the algebra here to find out exactly where that line crossed. So the final answer here is y equals -1/3 x plus 1/3. Right. Got 2 more I want to run through. Next one, passes through 0, 3 with a slope of 1/5. There's actually a shortcut on this problem that I'll show you in a second, but if you don't notice the shortcut, here is how you would do this. Start just like before, y equals blank x plus blank. Let's go ahead and plug in the slope. They gave us that, so that goes in for the m. We don't know what the b is, so what we're going to do is plug in our ordered pair, x and y. It's going to go in for x and y. So in for x, I'm going to plug a 0. In for y, I'm going to plug a 3. And I'm going to bring everything else down. I'm going to bring down the 1/5. And since I don't know what b is my variable. I'm going to take b as a variable and try to solve for it. Well, over here, anything times 0 is just 0. And, I could either move the 0 to the other side, but that's going to keep it the same. This would just be b is equal to 3. So I can plug the 3 in now, and that's my answer. Now, if you were paying attention here, this is actually one of the easier problems I did in the previous video. 0, 3, this ordered pair that they gave us, is right on the y-axis. So we know that 0, 3 is the y-intercept, and we didn't really have to do all this work right here. So all these steps that we did, we could have skipped that and just plugged the 3 in right here, because 0, 3 is a y-intercept. Any point that has a 0 in for the x should be a y-intercept on the graph. So we could have just gone right away and wrote that if we saw it. So I know I did a little extra work there. Never hurts if you're not sure what to do, but that's an easier way to solve that problem. Okay. One more to go. I'm going to start here by writing my y equals blank x plus blank. I'm trying to fill in the slope and the y-intercept. And what you may notice on this problem is that, unfortunately, we don't even have a slope. They gave us 2 ordered pairs here. So if you're stuck, think back to a formula that you talked about when your teacher taught you slope. So you should have learned some formula that the slope, or m, is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? And if you remember that formula, we can do the same exact formula to find the slope in this example. So let's go ahead and start subtracting here. So y2 would be -1 minus 5 over Okay, we'll do 7. And since that's minus a negative 2, I'm just going to change that to a plus 2 right now. That should equal, now negative 1 minus 5, that's negative 6. 7 plus 2 is 9. So we're going to have to reduce this here a little bit. That will give me a slope of negative 2/3. Now that I've found this, I can plug that in. So that now we're almost there. The step of confusion happens here. People look at these points and they say, well, okay, I have 2 of them now. Which one do I plug in? The answer is yes. You might say, well, you didn't answer my question. It doesn't matter which one you plug in. You can plug in negative 2, 5, or you could plug in the 7, negative 1. And both of those should give you the same b after you're finished solving. So let's actually, I'll pick one. You can pick whichever one you want. I think I'll pick negative 2, 5 for my notes. You can 7, negative 1, and you should come up with the same thing that I get. But if we go ahead and fill in some blanks here, so I'm just going to bring down the negative 2/3 and leave some blanks where the x is. And we're solving for b, so let me put b in here as our variable. I'm going to pick point negative 2, 5, so I'll put a negative 2 in for the x, and I'm going to put a 5 in for the y. Now, if we multiply over here, negative 2/3 times negative 2, actually that's going to give us 4/3 again. This will be positive 4/3, so equals 5 plus b. And now to get the b by itself, again, 4/3, this will probably help me to think of this as 1 1/3 here. So I'm going to write 1 1/3 plus b equals 5. And I'm just going to subtract 1 1/3 from both sides. Okay. Now we're subtracting 5 minus 1 1/3. Again, if you have your calculator handy, you can use that, or if you want to do it in your head, you can. That should be 3 2/3 is equal to b. So now our final step is just to plug that 3 2/3 in for our line. Now, that should be our solution. And what you can find here is that if I were to actually graph these points, this should kind of make sense. So just to show you that, you know, our line is probably going to make sense and that all this stuff that I've been showing you is connected, let's go to negative 2, 5. It's up here somewhere. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this would be the point negative 2, 5. This would be the point 7, negative 1. So it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, negative 1. And we know that our slope is 2/3. So to connect these two, if we did something like going up 2 and backwards 3, it's a slope of negative 2/3. We should be able to get to that other point. Yep, they are connected. And notice that if I connect these lines here, that this graph appears to cross through the y-axis right here, and that's about, if we go up 1, 2, 3, that's about 3 2/3. It should be, because that's what we found for our answer here. So again, all of this stuff is connected. The graph is connected to the algebra. And it's important to remember that as you're going through these problems. And again, I'm going to flip back to the notes one more time to sum things up. You want to start by writing y equals blank x plus blank. The goal is to fill in both of these blanks, the slope and the y-intercept. If you're given the slope, just plug it right in. If you're not given the slope, use your slope formula over here. After you're done that, take any ordered pair you're given. If you have 2 ordered pairs, it doesn't matter which one you pick. Plug your ordered pair into the equation. Okay? And then finally, your final answer should be a y equals, something x plus something answer.